Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The Senate's bill to keep the government funded past the midterm elections would keep critical cybersecurity authorities alive through December. The continuing resolution would also extend the authorities of a central fund that invests in agency technology projects. For more, Federal News Network cybersecurity reporter Justin Doubleday joins me. Justin, welcome back.
Hey, Eric. Thanks for having me.
All right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this Senate CR and how is it different from the House bill when it comes to cybersecurity funding?
Well, yeah, the Senate CR is a little bit longer than the House passed bill. House Republicans passed their version of what they call a quote-unquote clean CR along party lines last month. The Senate Appropriations Committee unveiled its version of the bill on Sunday. And this has more of a bipartisan flavor because, of course, the Senate has to meet that 60-vote threshold to advance most bills. Senate Appropriations Committee Chairwoman Susan Collins said she worked with colleagues in both parties to craft the funding measure, and she said it's a straightforward bill. It doesn't include any poison pills. It does block the Office of Management and Budget from implementing its rewrite of federal grant regulations. There's been a lot of consternation around that rewrite politicizing federal grant making. And Appropriations Committee Vice Chairwoman Patty Murray, a Democrat, of course, came out in favor of the bill as well. And so this Senate CR is a little bit more bipartisan, includes some things that both parties would care about, including extending some cybersecurity authorities, some technology authorities, which we can talk about.
Let's do that. Tell us a little bit about what the cybersecurity authorities they're speaking of that they would like to extend temporarily.
Yeah, so unlike the House bill, the Senate CR would extend two key cybersecurity authorities for the whole stopgap through December 11th. The first one is the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act of 2015. That law is set to expire on September 30th. It actually did expire during last year's government shutdown, but it was reauthorized as part of the annual appropriations bill through September. And CISA 2015 provides basically liability and privacy protections that encourage companies to share data about cyber incidents with the government and with each other so that they can essentially share things behind the scenes without fear of, being held liable or it coming out through a FOIA request or anything like that. And then the other law, cybersecurity law, that would be extended through December is the Federal Cybersecurity Enhancement Act of 2015. And that allows the Department of Homeland Security to deploy intrusion detection tools like the long-running Einstein service across federal agencies. So that's a critical cybersecurity authority for federal agencies specifically.
And why is there so much worry and consternation about reauthorizing the CISA 2015 law? It's almost been downcasted in its level of importance just based on, what we heard when the agency was created.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. CISA 2015 is the information sharing law that allows agencies like CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, to work really closely with the private sector and do a lot of that sort of back and forth information sharing because the private sector owns so much of critical infrastructure. It's just really important for that relationship to be pretty close. And so that law kind of facilitates that information sharing. And there's a couple of things going on right now that make that especially important. The first is this emergence of AI and AI-driven cybersecurity vulnerabilities. This has just gotten a lot of press, obviously, over the last few months with different incidents, with the advancements in these models and their ability to find and exploit software vulnerabilities. The Trump administration has set up a program called Gold Eagle to work with industry on finding AI-produced vulnerabilities. And a few trade associations, or more than a few trade associations, 23 of them, urged lawmakers to extend CISA 2015, and they specifically highlighted Gold Eagle as a program that is essentially only able to be successful because of CISA's 2015 authorities. And then the other thing that's going on right now, and folks may have seen, is these cyber attacks on the water sector. Water utilities in Michigan and in other states have confirmed to have suffered some level of cyber attack. And House Homeland Security Committee Chairman Andrew Garbarino has pointed out that CISA 2015 allows the federal government to quickly work with water utilities and states and the private sector and everyone involved there to quickly figure out what's going on and to work on a solution. And so those are two real world examples of where CISA 2015 is pretty important for policymakers.
Speaking here with Federal News Network cybersecurity reporter Justin Doubleday, this bill also includes an extension of the all-too-famous Technology Modernization Fund. Where is Congress standing in reauthorizing that statute?
Well, a long-term reauthorization remains somewhat elusive, but as you said, this Senate bill would extend the fund through December 11th. It is also set to expire on September 30th. And so what does that mean? It means that the TMF can no longer invest new funding in new projects. It can continue to kind of oversee the projects that it has already funded, but this would essentially freeze the TMF going forward. It's a General Services Administration program that's invested a lot of funding, more than $1 billion now, in agency projects. And there's just a lot of questions about its future at this point, and it continues to kind of have this kind of recurring reauthorization fight now every few months over the last year, really.
Yeah, how much money are we talking about actually still going through the TMF when it comes to funding new technology?
The fund still actually has about $200 million left in funding available for agencies, so not a small amount by any means. And actually, the TMF released a request for proposals back earlier this year, focused on generative artificial intelligence and permitting modernization. The deadline for agencies to respond to that was July 24th. TMF Acting Executive Director Jesse Pasilkin spoke at GSA's Emerging Technology Showcase last week, and she said that while the fund's future may look uncertain, it's still here, and she is encouraging agencies to continue working with the program.
We just had a call for proposals where we asked agencies what their biggest needs were. We got a great response, and I want to be clear that TMF is still open for business. We know that sometimes we need that startup capital because Congress has not moved as fast as technology has changed. And so I want to be really clear, the TMF and other mechanisms are still around to be creative, to access funds, and most importantly, to help do that measurement and make change. We have already saved, I think, 378 million hours for the American people, and we know that more can be saved on top of that.
And that's GSA's Jesse Pasilkin, the Acting Executive Director of the Technology Modernization Fund.
And that is Federal News Network cybersecurity reporter Justin Doubleday giving us the update on the CISA 2015 law. Justin, thank you as always.
Thanks, Eric.
And you can find more of Justin's reporting on this topic at federalnewsnetwork.com.
Sean O'Keefe, former Navy Secretary, NASA Administrator, and senior leader across multiple presidential administrations, reflects on the principles that shaped his long federal career. In this episode of Lessons in Leadership, he joined Shane Canfield, CEO of WEPA, to discuss motivating teams through uncertainty, leading across agencies, and staying rooted in mission during times of public scrutiny and change.
Hello, and welcome to the Lessons in Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Shane Canfield, CEO of WEPA. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Sean O'Keefe, former NASA Administrator, former Deputy Director of the Office of Management and Budget, former Secretary of the Navy, former Comptroller and CFO of the Defense Department, and Professor Emeritus at Syracuse University's Maxwell School of Public Affairs. Welcome, and thank you for joining.
Well, thank you, Shane. Delight to be with you. Appreciate it very much.
What first drew you into public service, and when was it evident to you that leadership was an important part of the roles you played?
Well, I grew up around the public service. My dad was a career naval officer. He was a submariner, and we lived all over the place throughout the country. And as a result, I got an up-close and personal understanding through him, as well as through all the folks he associated with and the environments he was working in, just what the extraordinary value is of public service and why what is it that would motivate people to want to be engaged in it and to be really involving themselves in what is something larger than themselves. And the only place that that is really, formulated properly is within the public sector and the public service. That again is the beneficiary are the beneficiaries are the citizens of the nation, the community, and the region in which you live.
Did you think about leadership early on, saying I need to be a great leader, and therefore I'm going to learn how to do it, or did you just naturally evolve into it? Any thoughts on that?
I guess it evolved by the great good fortune of being witness to several really extraordinary leaders, people who really did take the initiative to engage others in the task, to pull together and motivate folks to really contribute their very best to achieve an outcome. And I saw the value of that on multiple occasions and found that was the primary ingredient, the trait, the characteristic that needed to be exhibited is the fundamentals of leadership in moving everyone engaged towards a common objective.
You have served under several presidents. Can you talk a little bit about that? What were there challenges to overcome, or were you away from politics so you didn't get? Talk about that a little bit. How does it differ as you serve through a transition, or does leadership stay the same?
Oh no, it's it's really critically important in transition cases, to be sure. But the two presidents that I served in their administrations were President George H.W. Bush and President George W. Bush in two different eras, obviously. But as a consequence, that was the closest I came to understanding the nature of the individuals who were in that ultimate leadership capacity, and their capability to motivate. Both of them were just extraordinarily inspiring people who motivated everybody to be part of the solution. But most importantly, they also had a capacity of really designating what needed to be done, and you knew that they were perfectly prepared to do it themselves, and that made the task that much more achievable. There were several different circumstances in understanding what the objectives of the senior leadership are all about.
You've worked for different kinds of organizations, political administrations, and then government departments, agencies, and then private sector, and now academia. How does that affect your leadership style? Or do you find that leadership, the core tenets of leadership, are applicable no matter what the organization you find yourself in and having to lead? It doesn't matter where you are, that the core leadership characteristics are the same? Are they different? Are you adapting?
Well, there's a common myth in my judgment, and I'm probably the minority view of this in the academic field of public management. That common myth is that you can't apply the same principles in the public sector that you do in the private sector.
Yeah.
I never found that to be an impediment.
Okay.
It was always a circumstance where, strategy, the focus on the talent, people engaged, the process to going through decision making, the integrity imperative that must be there in order to demonstrate the absolute conviction of what's intended here, as well as the moral standing of what it is you're attempting to achieve. All those factors are very much the same. It's going to have its nuances, and there are very distinctive, differentiators within those organizations and those sectors. But at the same time, those basic principles, those tenets, foundations of what make up organizations and organization theory in so many ways are fundamentally the same. And how you employ those may be slightly nuanced to match the condition, but they all are imperative in the same direction.
A little bit of a different direction. You were part of the very first cohort of what is now Presidential Management Intern Program, later became the Presidential Management Fellows Program. What did that early experience teach you about leading within government?
The Presidential Management Intern Program, as it started, was designed for just that purpose, a focus on public management, a focus on implementation. And its evolution over time has been extraordinary. It mystifies me why that has been the subject now of an executive order that has dismantled it. And it's absolutely unconscionable given the nature of the hundreds, thousands of people who moved through that program in the course of the last nearly 50 years that have gone on in some cases to be senior executives within the federal government, and in other cases they've moved on to other kinds of pursuits. But even with that, even for those who have left the service, they walked away with an appreciation of what public service is all about, why it matters, and why this is so critical to get it right. Because by and large, the reason why these functions are delegated to the public sector is because no one else can do it. Usually that's the case. It takes that kind of focus of a public entity in order to achieve an outcome that frankly would not be achieved in other spheres. So as a result of that, it gave me an incredibly in-depth understanding of that process at a very early stage in my career that has lasted the entirety of that professional experience.
A closing question. Who has influenced your leadership style, and what about their example stays with you? And that question can be cast broadly. So, inside government, outside government, perhaps not government at all, somebody that you've met, reported to, been mentored by, a broad net. But when you think about broadly, when you think about who has influenced you, who comes to mind?
I would have to say that the number one, hands down, greatest influence during the course of my life was my dad. He was an engineer, so everything was a calculated risk. I think I was probably 25 before I realized the answer was not to be found for everything in a slide rule, but that was his bent and his mindset. And he taught me how to think critically. And it really was one of the most extraordinary attributes. And he was an inspiring parent and mentor in so many ways. And all the different things I've done throughout the course of his life, I had the opportunity through much of it to be able to consult with him on a variety of things, and always walked away with a more informed perspective. Ed was an extraordinary public servant in his own right.
Well, Sean, thank you very much for sharing your insights and experiences. It has been a pleasure talking.
I'm delighted to be with you, Shane. Thank you so much for doing this.
And this is Shane Canfield, CEO of WEPA, reminding you to empower your team and embrace challenges. Until the next time on Lessons in Leadership.
Find the full podcast and future episodes of Lessons in Leadership on the Federal News Network app and anywhere you enjoy your podcasts.